I think it's a very important film.
Uh-huh.
It's a funny experience to see it because the same guy, Ron Kovic, inspired me to do Coming Home,
Uh-huh.
which was made, God, 13 years ago. Oliver Stone describes it as the woman's version of the story.
Yeah, it's tremendously powerful.
And it's an important film. I think I admire Oliver a lot, and I think Tom Cruise did a really good job.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
that Ron Kovic is considering running for Congress.
I had heard that, yes, I had heard that. Well, you know, it seems like as we go into the 90s, it's a really good time in a lot of people's lives.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel as we stand here on the threshold of the new decade?
Optimistic. I'm glad it's a new decade. I'm glad the 80s are over. I think it's an important crossroads. I think we can really blow it as a globe, or we can begin to really confront and deal with the problems that face us, economic, environmental, and so forth. It's really interesting because the Cold War is coming to an end and the environment is heating up, and people are kind of going across previous ideological barriers, and I think coming together on some pretty important issues. So I feel kind of optimistic.
Since we are talking about fitness today, and a lot of people are trying to get their New Year's resolutions in order, what specific piece of motivational advice can you give people who are still having trouble working out and fitting fitness in?
I don't know. It's not so easy to give motivational advice because if you don't do it, it's hard to understand why so many of us do it no matter what. Once you begin and you understand how much better it makes you feel, how you have more energy, you have a more positive outlook on life, you feel better about yourself, you can handle stress better. The motivation is just how good it makes you feel. And just trust me, it's true, it really does work. It really does work. The problem is figuring out how to fit it into a busy schedule, and you know, most of us are pretty busy, but once you get it, you know, once you start feeling the difference, then you just find a way to do it pretty much. I mean, there are times when I'm just too busy to fit it in, but for the most part, even if it means getting up a little earlier or going to bed a little later, I manage to do something almost every day. And it can be walking, it can be going for a brisk walk, it can be biking, swimming, running, jogging, or doing my videos.
A lot of people, I think, are going to be attracted to this new video because of the title, and it actually has 3 separate programs in it. Tell me about that.
Well, for the last couple of years, I was getting so many letters from people requesting a stretch tape and talking about the problems of stress and how to deal with stress, and stress has become a big issue for a lot of people. So together with the doctors that I work with, we did some studies over the last couple of years about how best to do a tape addressing these issues. So we came up with the concept of starting off with a 20-minute light aerobic program, because aerobics is a very good way to reduce stress, because it lowers the level of adrenaline in the body and it increases the level of a hormone called endorphin, which is an antidepressant and stress reduction chemical that circulates in the body when you do aerobics. The aerobics are followed by 20 minutes of full body stretch, body part by body part, with a lot of breathing, teaches you how to stretch properly. It's very relaxing. And then the program ends with between 10 to 15 minutes of stress reduction, where you lie on the floor and you breathe and contract individual muscle groups, going all the way through your body, releasing and tensing and releasing. And when it's over, you just feel so good. And it teaches you how to notice where in your body you're beginning to hold tension during the day and how to release it. When we were filming it, I remember after we finished that part, I looked up and the crew they were just kind of nodding off. It's very relaxing. It really works.
With kinder, gentler seeming to be the new buzzword for the decade, is light aerobics a kinder, gentler way to work out?
Yes, it's equally as effective. I mean, there's no question. One of the important things that we learned in the 80s was to have an effective exercise program, including losing body fat. It's better to work out at a moderate level, not to push yourself too hard. You don't want to huff and puff and get breathless and feel pain, and this was really good news for those of us who don't like to hurt. So, yeah, I think kinder and gentler equals an effective program.
Obviously, for you, working out and staying fit is a way of dealing with tension and pressures. Why is it, do you think, so many entertainers turn to drugs and alcohol as a result of the pressures from stardom?
I don't know. I think when you become famous very quickly, and suddenly everybody is paying attention to you and telling you you're wonderful, but you don't feel any different than you were before you were famous, it's hard to know how to handle that, and the sudden influx of money, and you have the money to get drugs, I guess, and everyone is not brought up with a high level of self-discipline, and so it's like an easy way to try to round the edges and dull the pain and dull the anxiety. You know, I think there's a growing consciousness of how destructive it is, and I think more and more people are turning away from that. I spent New Year's Eve at a Grateful Dead concert in Oakland, which is an annual event for the last 25 years. And I remember years ago, you'd go to a concert like that and everybody was high on something. And I was really impressed this year. At least none of the people backstage seemed to be on, not only on any kind of drugs, but they weren't drinking, and a lot of them were in programs, you know, alcohol or drug programs. And I thought it was very encouraging. Mm-hmm. There was definitely a mellower, kinder, gentler atmosphere.
You mentioned environment a few minutes ago. Where are you putting your emphasis in this key issue right now? How are you working on the environment?
Well, because I live in the state of California, I'm working very hard on an initiative that's going to be on the ballot next November, the California Environmental Initiative of 1990, which will address the problem of pesticides in food, untreated sewage being dumped into the ocean, the danger of oil spills off our coast, and cleaning up the chemicals that are being released into our air that's destroying the ozone and causing global warming. This is an initiative that covers all of those areas. It's probably the most comprehensive initiative that's ever been before voters in the history of the country, and hopefully California will once again lead the way.
It's such a key issue for everybody right now.
Absolutely. Well, it's very interesting that people across the spectrum of politics and ideologies around the world are beginning to lay differences aside and realize that we all breathe the same air, we all depend on forests and oceans, and we have to do something about it. And you know, but unfortunately, while we see totalitarianism declining in the Eastern European countries, you know, we can't forget that Hungary, for example, just signed a contract with the Bechtel Corporation to build 2 nuclear plants. So the problem is still there.
Yes.
Communism may go, but the problem of destroying the environment is very much there, and hopefully we can join together to do something about it.
Quickly, if a college professor were teaching a class on women who've made a difference in our generation, how would you like him to remember Jane Fonda?
Oh, that I was willing to stick my neck out and you can survive anyway. That it's important to stand up for what you believe, I think, and maybe I've been a role model in that area.
You certainly have for a lot of us. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you, Kip.